Hello, my colleagues. Welcome to our discussion today about change management. Change management is extremely important because businesses go through change all the time. Today, I will be presenting to you what I have coined as the careful change model. It's a model that focuses on the most important parts of any change. So let's jump straight into today's discussion. This will be very quick. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Phil. I'm a project management, leadership coach, and trainer. I have been in the world of business and project management for over 2 decades. A lot of experience on the government side working with agencies such as the FBI and NASA, Department of Transport, and others. I've also been fortunate to work in a number of companies from defense and space to gaming and aero. Here are some of the organizations I've been instrumental in training, and my firm is called Praision. Very recently, I wrote a book about change management leadership, and the book was birthed out of a response to the never-ending change around us. The business landscape is constantly evolving, as you must have already realized, with 85% of senior executives reporting a significant increase in change projects in recent years. We don't need to look too far. We just look a few years back and we realize that we have all been somewhat survivors of change, if you will. I just say change survivors, especially with the crazy pandemic. If you were hit with COVID, you probably realized that you went through immense change, right? And that's not the only change that we've seen in the most recent years. We've seen a cascading array of changes. Let's talk about the rise of the smartphone. For those of you who were not born in the age of smartphones, you know that that was huge change for some of us, right? What about social media explosion? Some people are still resistant to social media, and I don't blame them, right? It's quite a big change to many people. The e-commerce boom, many of those brick and mortar stores are now out of business. The Toys R Us's of this world. Amazon has made e-commerce a permanent fixture, right? And not just Amazon, many other organizations, eBay and so on. Cloud computing revolution, artificial intelligence. Hello. If you don't see that as change, I don't know what you do see as change. AI, huge change. What about the automation wave, robots and automation? Rise of the gig economy, right? Global connectivity and growth. I could go on and on, right? Do you want more? Here's another set of change, space exploration boom. People are now thinking of recreational trips to space, blockchain, virtual reality, huge focus on mental health in the past number of years, like never before, right? The shifting geopolitical landscape, cyber security threats. Like those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, you would never have thought you would have crazies. Just that's their full-time job, being a threat. So there's been a lot of change in the world, my friends. And while change is prevalent, it's all around us, managing change is even more important to understand the art and the science of managing it. It's crucial to navigate this ongoing transformation. Managing isn't enough. Now, we're talking about change in organizations now, right? There's an art and a science to it. And there's certain things that we need to be aware of as we navigate change. The sobering reality about change management is only 34% of change initiatives succeed. I'm going to be showing you some statistics now. So think about it. Of all the change that goes on in organizations, majority of that change is not successful. The change either doesn't last or people are resistant to the change or other factors. And in the realm of change management, the importance of leadership that is both mindful and empathetic cannot be overstated. What caused me to write this literature was I was in the middle of a very turbulent change in an organization that will remain nameless. But it was very sad because what I saw from management was draconian rule. In other words, change or die, change or perish. If you want to be here, if you want a job, then we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. And you need to get on the bandwagon and obey. Similar to something like this. And I know you can relate. It's like pivot or perish, you peons. You got no voice in the matter. Change or die. And that's not the way change should be. It made me reflect that that change management was trying to push was a huge oversight in change management, the human factor. So I began to think about what was missing in the change I had been through and what was present in other changes in other organizations that I had been in that will also remain nameless. But they are the case studies for my writing this book. And I realized as I began to think about what was missing, comparing and contrasting this to another model of change, or I should say, many other models of change, it was apparent what was missing. It was apparent what was not being emphasized. The PMI, they wrote a book or a publication. It's called Managing Change in Organizations, and they break down change into different categories. So they have the Bridges transition model, which is a good start, understanding what happens to individuals as they go through change. And that was kind of espoused in the Kubler-Ross model or the change curve. People go through denial. They go through a stage of anger. They start trying to make sense of it, right? Bargaining. Then they could become very depressed. And this is not everyone, but this is change that people view as monumental change. You could call it a level 2 type of change. It's beyond process. This is now personal. And I realized that a lot of organizations don't think about this. They don't think about what people go through. Not everyone. Some people don't care. Some people is like, okay, well, as long as I get a paycheck, I don't care. Not every change is viewed from the right lens. And in my book, I look at change as largely psychological. I look at change as being all about the people, not about the process. So category 1 is like a psychological type of change. Category 2 in PMI's publication is change as a process. And they give us an example of John Carter's model, 8 steps as one goes through change. And then we have category 3, change represented as system models. And this was broken down by Watzlawick, Weekland, and Fitch. And they surmised that most existing theories of change were philosophical. So they broke it down further and they went more into the first order and second order change categories. The first order change category, we can look at things like this, like going through the scope of the change, creating a vision, driving commitment, accelerating the transition, and so on. And then we can also look at change through the lens of the Jack Welch GE model. Again, it's really more like the process of change. And then the third category in the book is the PMI approach. And it's formulating the change, planning the change, implementing it, managing it, and sustaining it. But there's something missing, right? And what is missing is the people element more than anything else. It's buried in there, but it's not at the surface that management needs to be thinking of change at. It's buried. So what I seek to do is elevate the importance of the people piece, the humans going through the change. Organizations with effective change management from McKinsey have a 6 times higher chance of exceeding performance targets. So if only we paid more attention to the catalyst for change, which is the people, and do it the right way, we'll do a lot better. It's the human factor. So, what I am recommending to organizations going through change is they elevate the importance of the emotional, because I see that as being missing. I look at levels of emotional connection as level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1, I just look at it as sympathy. Oh, I feel sorry for you. You feel sorry for me, but you're not really thinking as me. All right. You're so sorry you need to go through this change, Phil. But put yourself in my shoes. Did you do that? No. Level 2 is when you begin to do that. Level 2 is empathy. When you share feelings, you take a step further by putting yourself in the person's shoes, trying to understand their emotions. Level 3 is, in my mind, the big one that management needs to start at, and that is compassion. It's understanding, it's sharing, but beyond that, it's action. Not just saying, okay, I've heard you, I feel sorry for you. Oh, I can imagine what it will be like. Okay, now what are you going to do about it? Take action. So, this is the most comprehensive level when you combine an understanding, shared emotions, and the desire to help and moving into action. I call it traction for action. Compassion often motivates you to take action, such as offering support and finding solutions. So, one of the things that I have found in change in organizations is there's no sense making sessions. And those are extremely important to have, because when you have these sense making sessions, that's where your empathy comes through, and that's where you're able to demonstrate compassion. Okay. So, in this model, this 7-step model, the 7 steps are: number 1, compassion, understanding, taking action based on your understanding. So, as opposed to shoving a vision down people's throat, my idea is to come forward with compassion right off the bat. Understand that people are going through challenges, just understanding that change is coming, whatever that change might be. To you, it might be a small change. To them, it might be, oh, the sky is falling, the earth is shattering kind of perception. Number 2 is active listening and inclusion beyond hearing. We're not just talking about listening. Like a manager says, okay, listen to me and just be quiet. Now you've said your concern, now be quiet. No, that's not how it should be. But unfortunately, a lot of managements, they're so eager to get done and wrap up the change, they don't want to hear anything. It's all about schedule, schedule. We got 3 weeks, we got 2 weeks, so shut up. No, that's not a good perception. It's not a good attitude where change is concerned. Number 3 takes it up a notch from just active listening and inclusion to actual dialogue. So now we're having dialogue, painting with patience, painting the picture of the future. A lot of times, management, I know they're visionary, but oftentimes they come like Moses with the scrolls, and they are not really listening to what people have to say. It's like, get on the bandwagon and do it. Instead, we want responsive dialogue. And I'm going to show you the science and the mindset behind these steps, because this model is different. This model is not meant to replace your already existing models. This model is meant to accentuate the human element majorly and to really focus on it. Number 4, empower through engagement. So when I say empower, a quote from my mentor, John Maxwell, he says, only secure leaders give power to others. How can you give power to people? You give power to them by making them part of the process, giving them the option, conferring that authority, giving them part of the puzzle to put together. Not, this is what we're going to do. No, empower as much as you can. So empower through engagement. get them engaged, get them part of unraveling the plan, and do it early, right? And craft a collaborative timeline. A lot of times people will just tell you, oh, we got 5 months for this change. But in my mind, there needs to be dialogue about a timeline. I'm not saying it's always possible, but in my mind, there needs to be dialogue. Excuse me. There needs to be a lot of dialogue. All right. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 is flexibility in planning. I just call it being agile. So while you have a timeline that you're thinking of, that you've collaborated on, that you've worked on, there may be opportunities and you got to be flexible. Number 6 is unite and empower. So join forces, high level management, join forces with mid-level management, join forces with lower level management, and just look at this as a servant leadership thing. Look at it as a circle without one single person being pointed at in the middle, but understanding this is collaborative. So unite and empower. And you're empowering people in their own respective silos and departments to champion the change, not as a command, but as an empowerment, right? Truly valuing people and seeing the value in all those individuals that you want to change, right? You're thinking, I want my people to use SAP, and your people have concerns because some of them have been using a different system for the past 30 years. And you just want to shut them up and shove them down the alley and say, pivot or die. That's not how to do it. A lot of companies are guilty of this approach. Some of them not as overt, like pivot or die, but it's still draconian rule in a lot of firms, sad to say. Number 7, finally, you got to be lean and you got to think about learning. People have to learn, and you also need to think about the longevity. So we have 3 components in letter L. First of all, you want to do it as painlessly and as efficiently as possible. Secondly, you want to give people ample opportunity to learn and understand that people are diverse in how they learn, right? Remember the J curve that we just looked at? And then longevity. You got to make it a lasting change. And you know how to make it a lasting change? There are many variables, but the key variable is buy-in, understanding, feeling that this is part of my solution, not the solution management brought, but this is part of my solution. I was part of this. I own this as well. Not management pushed it and pushed it and pushed it on us. Whether it's a system, whether it's a business process that you're re-engineering, you got to get more traction from people. The next thing I want you to observe here are the arrows, very subtle at the top. But the arrows at the top are just here to make you see there needs to be a PDCA mindedness to it, right? A plan, do, check, act mindedness about it. You don't just say, oh, I'm done with compassion, then I move on to active listening. No, no, no. You're always in the compassionate state. You're always in the active listening state. And that continues. You don't leave it alone. It's not like the cycles where you do boom, 1, boom, 2. No. This is iterative. And it is also in some way incremental because you're always adding more and more and more to it. So that is the general idea behind this model. But let me also share with you a few other statistics behind the model. Leaders who demonstrate empathy see a 21% increase in team performance. And that's why in the beginning I said, it's not enough to have sympathy. You got to up the ante to empathy, right? And then you got to demonstrate the empathy, right? You got to be compassionate. And employees who feel supported are more likely to embrace change. The next one, A for active listening and inclusion, beyond hearing. Actively listening employees are 4 times more likely to feel valued, says Forbes from a recent survey. Inclusive listening fosters trust, not pushing the agenda and saying, now listen up, people. No, including them, right? And it ensures everyone's voice is heard. Now, when it comes to dialogue, organizations with open communication are 4.7 times more likely to outperform competitors. You want to do good in your organization, you want your change to go the extra mile, you got to be open in your communication. It's sad when management hides the agenda and then they come out like Moses with the scrolls and pushing things on people. That's not the way to do it. So two-way communication, dialogue, it helps address concerns and it builds buy-in. Number 4, empowered through engagement, crafting a collaborative timeline. Employees involved in decision making are 3 times more likely to be highly engaged, says Reich, 2023. The understanding here is that collaboration fosters ownership and commitment to the change. Number 5, flexibility in planning. Planning the path forward and being agile about it. So from the PMI, they obviously smell the coffee, which is why they bought Discipline Agile. We now have the ACP and a suite of other certifications because it's obvious that Agile is the way forward. But Agile projects are twice more likely to succeed than traditional ones. This is from PMI. This is, oh, the irony. This is from PMI. Adapting to unforeseen challenges increases the success rate of change initiatives. Number 6, unite and empower. Strong leadership support increases the chance of successful change. This is from ProSci, Masters in Change Management, and the ADCOM model. And the relevance of this is champions provide guidance, motivation, and remove roadblocks. You got to make your people champions at every level. I think it's very clear that looking at these statistics, it's not about the management. Change success is about the people you're putting through the change. Finally, number 7, lean implementation, learning, and longevity. You got to simplify the journey for your people. Be lean. Make it painless as possible. You know, some organizations, they're very guilty of putting so much change on people. The change becomes so monumental. It's now a burden. And people can't even think straight anymore. So, change initiatives with clear goals are 6 times more likely to succeed. What does this tell us? We got to work on the vision with the people. Don't just have the vision and say, one and done, now go do. No. Now I understand there are going to be times when urgency is of highest essence. Yes, I know. But as much as possible, we want to understand that we need a streamlined approach with continuous learning. We got to take what we're learning, put it back into the process. Just because you went live on day 1 doesn't mean that you're going to be successful on day 2 and 3. So you always want this lean-mindedness, you know, this plan, do, check, act, or this retrospective mindedness. So always look back and say, what could we have done better? Let's do it. Not just what could we have done better, but actually do it. So what makes the careful model different? What makes it different is you can use this model with any of the models you're using, but just be super aware of the human aspect. The human aspect is massive. There's a lot of change going on, but a lot of it is not successful. The greatest leaders are those who walk the path of change in the shoes of the followers, understanding the journey's terrain through their eyes. You want to be a great leader? Have some empathy. Step one, compassion. Compassion and understanding, that's the starting point. So, this principle in the careful model, it became vividly clear when I observed colleagues who had relied on certain tools since the 1980s. I was in this organization that will remain nameless, and my mentor in the organization was distraught. The poor guy had been using these tools since the 80s. Now, here's come SAP. Think about the dynamic. You feel I'm no longer useful. All my skills and all my dexterity on that system, and it was a blue screen, like those old. So imagine these people being told you gotta get on the bandwagon of SAP. No sense making, just work or die command. Not good, not good, not good. And just seeing people grapple, it made me start thinking. I mean, this is way back. This is way back. But in a lot of companies, nothing has changed. They were very reluctant, and that's why management started powering up on them. And their reluctance wasn't a rejection of innovation. We understood, yes, SAP is great. It's got all these fancy, you know, tools and the fancy GUI. Yes, it was just a plea for recognition. It's very sad. I actually kind of get emotional talking about it because my mentor was distraught. So imagine a company is going through change. You have people who have been used to certain systems and process, and you're almost terrorizing the people. That's not ideal. It's not ideal. I talked about level 1, 2, and 3 in the beginning, and I said we need to get to compassion, right? Compassion is, yes, I know you studied hard. Maybe I can help. Let's do this, as opposed to level 1. Uh, oh, that's sorry. I'm so sorry you failed, right? You recognize your sadness, but you ain't doing nothing about it. You got an 80, or maybe you got a 90. They got like a 30. And some people, they honestly would say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," but the next minute they're off. Level 2 is, I know how much you studied for that test. You must feel terrible, kind of resonating with the emotions. But what are you going to do about it? A lot of management, they know they're being draconian, but they don't care. And they ain't doing nothing about their bad behavior. You can do your management a favor and send them this video. Send them the video. Oh dear. Okay. So we got 3 silos here, my friends. I really want to hit home the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion. Sympathy is like pity for someone's misfortune. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Compassion is a deep awareness of and a wish to jump in and act and to act. Okay? So we want to have that compassion. We don't want to be like this horrible boss. It's like pivot peons. Yeah, we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be like this guy. Oh, listen to me and don't say a word. We don't want to be like that. We want to have that compassion, right? What are the inputs to compassion? So, this is the model. I take each letter, each word, each piece of the framework, and I'm breaking it down so that everyone truly understands what the inputs to this could be, what they could look like. So, compassion and understanding, there's certain inputs that I would expect. Apart from really sitting down and having wholesome conversations, there's things you could do to enable those conversations to be more productive. So, the inputs are as follows. We have employee feedback on current systems. A lot of management are ignorant about what their people are thinking, and that's no good. You also want to be aware of turnover rates and exit interview data, suggesting a need for improved systems, for example. And then you could have results from an organizational culture survey, which may indicate a readiness for change. And there are many more inputs that you could bring to the table that will help you when it comes to being compassionate, because compassionate needs enablement. Okay, if you don't know, then you ain't gonna do, you ain't gonna say. But if you do know, then you're empowered as management. The tools and techniques for compassion and understanding. Big one of my favorites is empathy mapping sessions. Empathy mapping sessions, this is where you work with cross-functional teams to map out what different stakeholders are saying, what people are feeling and thinking. And you're doing this in relation to the current system, if there is a system change, and the upcoming change. So you really want to get into the heart of what people are thinking. Let's divert for a quick second. I want to go a little bit deeper into this because empathy mapping is lacking a lot of change I see in firms. You got to do empathy mapping intentionally. And you got to look at it as a team process that helps you identify the thoughts and the feelings of a particular group. It could be the entire organization, it could be a subpopulace in the organization, but you do it by looking at the issue through the employee's eyes, right? You don't want it to be like just do as I say. No, no. You actually want to get into the mind, okay? So the variables that you want to track in an empathy mapping session are what the people say, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and doing. I used this example because what prompted the book was an SAP tyrannical push. And for example, the stakeholder could say, our current system is slow and not user friendly. I hope the new system will make month end closing easier. What are they thinking? Will I be able to learn the new SAP system quickly? What if my job becomes redundant with the new automation? This was a genuine concern of a lot of my colleagues in that firm. What are they feeling? Anxious, anxiety about the change. You know, I often talk to my sister who is in this area of diversity and inclusion, and there's this misnomer that diversity is all about race, orientation, religion, and that's part of it, but that's not all of it. A lot of it has to do with diversity of thinking, neurodiversity, diversity in perceiving the world around you. Not everyone is bulletproof to change. Some people, they don't care. They're so resilient. But other people are very fragile. So as leadership, we need to be thinking what our people are thinking or concerned about. That's why this is an empathy map. Empathy is feeling what other people are. And the empathy map helps you become more aware of their feelings. Some people are anxious. Some people excited about the potential for less manual work, but not everyone is like that. My mentor, he was so concerned. He thought, that's it. They're getting rid of me. They're edging me out. Even though that wasn't why. I mean, he's not the only person who used that antiquated system, if you get what I mean. And shares concerns with colleagues, starts reading about SAP to prepare for the change. So it helps you identify the thoughts and feelings of a particular group. Could be customers, but this case, we're looking more at employees. This could also be used in design thinking. If you're doing this in design thinking, yes, you would really be thinking about your customers more. But if you're doing this with a change in the organization lens, in this case, your customers are actually the people in the firm, the stakeholders. Okay, I like this one from Mind Tools. It's a very clear idea of how this could be. So you could have people in the room either sharing firsthand, or you could have post-it notes that are stuck in these sections. Who are we empathizing with? What do they need to do? What do they see? What do they say? What do they do? What do they hear? And what do they think and feel? There's one thing that people will never forget, and that is how you make them feel. They may forget about everything else, but if the change makes them feel uncomfortable and not valued, they will never forget that. But I haven't forgotten it. This is going on. I don't want to give you the timeline because you'll know the company. But this is going on several decades, you know. But I won't forget the feeling because I empathize with my mentor. I felt so bad for him. And this is a guy who taught me, he sat me down and taught me all I needed to know about that system. So I was really feeling his pain, really feeling his pain. All right. So for those of you who just come in, we're talking about the aspect of compassion in my framework, the careful model. And we're talking about tools and techniques. I know it may sound a little bit strange to some people that it sounds a bit scientific, but they are techniques, right? For you to do a good job with compassion and understanding. You got to get down to the bottom of what people are thinking and feeling and saying. And people need to know it's a safe space. So you always need to let people know, don't worry, everything that you say here, it's safe. You know, get candid, honest opinions are sought. The output, you could get an empathy map for each stakeholder group affected by the transformation. You could also work on a summary report of focus groups, findings, detailing common concerns and sentiments about the change. And when you put together focus groups, again, it needs to be done, in my mind, with all levels. Don't just look, oh, senior management is all going to be in this focus group. No, have diverse levels. Have everyone from the janitor to the CEO as potential people on that focus group. That's how you're going to get the best. Make it a safe space. We all just play roles. That's the idea. All right. A summary report could look something like this, right? You could have the key concerns raised, suggestions for leadership, and the general emotional temperature. This can be done by people who are very good at summarizing, and very good at looking at data quick. Okay. And my friends, that's it for today. We have come to the end of my introduction to the careful model, and we just went through the compassion piece, the very first one. On the 2nd of April, I will be presenting this in a lot more detail. If you want to be part of that webinar, just stay tuned to the projectmanagementdoctor.com website. The announcement will be up there when the webinar will hold. It will actually be at 11 a.m. Eastern. I'll be joined by a couple of my awesome colleagues, be joined by Robert Annis, business psychologist, and my mentor in Agile, Roy Schilling. We will all be discussing the careful model, breaking it apart, and revealing further insights. So if you want to be part of that, just stay tuned to projectmanagementdoctor.com. You'll be seeing an announcement in the week that follows. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I would love to take questions that you have. I see that we had a chat come in, and this is from Dirk. Well, thank you, Dirk, for chatting in. Dirk says, hello, lived in the Caribbean. How can I get my hands on some of your materials? So, Dirk, the best way to get some of my materials, and I'll just share this with you. You could go on Amazon. There are a number of books that you can find on Amazon, but you can also find books on this site. Let me see if I can send you a link to where you can find some of our materials. If you go to the praision.com site, which will lead to the website I just mentioned, the projectmanagementdoctor.com. You will also be able to get some of our courses. You'll be able to download some of our materials. This book is on a different website. And let's see if I can get it up to share with you. I will put a link, actually. I'm going to put a link to the book. And thank you for asking. Let's put a link to the book. I was just so concerned with sharing this because I talk to a lot of individuals in organizations on the regular, and many of my mentees going through change. I hear these recurring tales about what they're going through. So I'm hoping that this gives some sort of comfort to those going through crazy change at the moment. So that's the book. Let's go ahead and let me share it. If I can get that open. Okay. So that's the book. It's called Change Management Leadership. And the book also comes with 16 templates of tools that could possibly be used by those going through change, especially those finding it hard. So, Dirk, thank you for the question. I hope that gives you some clarity on how to get our materials. But if you go to the praision.com site, you'll be able to get a whole lot more of our materials there. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. For those of you going through change, be tenacious, be dogged, be rugged, speak up. Don't be silent. Okay. I know people are scared, but if your conviction is moving you to say something, not in a bad way. You see, we don't want to be like what my buddy, we call him Dr. Rick Brinkman. What we call him is the conscious communicator, because he talks about conscious communication and being a loose cannon, being a grenade. You don't want to be a grenade that Dr. Rick's talking about, because a grenade just destroys everything in its environs. We don't want to do that. We want to have a more controlled response to sharing our concerns. So don't be a grenade. You got to be a conscious communicator, which is being aware of your emotions. So if you're going through change that's difficult and you want to share your perspectives with management, yelling doesn't do any good. Tearing people down doesn't do any good. Try your best to deliver it in a measured, sensible way, especially in the business place. Being a grenade, it doesn't help. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you, Dirk. I appreciate you joining. And thanks everyone else who joined on the different platforms. Those of you on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, thank you all very much. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. You take care, and bye for now.